Ruin is a strong word, and it is being used with the specific, measured meaning that the avoidance interior psychology supports, rather than the dramatic, externally legible meaning that the word most readily evokes. The avoidance life, in the aftermath of the betrayal and its consequences, does not look ruined from the outside. The functioning continues, the career continues, the social life continues. The composed, self-sufficient presentation that the avoidant has maintained across every significant interior event of their relational history continues to be maintained with the practiced, resource-consuming efficiency of someone who has been producing this presentation for decades. The ruining is interior, the specific, structural, foundational quality of something that has been permanently altered in the avoidance interior landscape in a way that the landscape does not return from, not the ordinary damage of a regrettable loss. The avoidance relational history has accumulated several of those, and the interior landscape has absorbed them within the narrative frameworks that make them processable. The specific, deeper, beyond narrative accommodation damage of someone who has done something that the honest interior cannot accommodate within any framework that leaves the self-concept intact. The self-concept is where the ruining happens. In the specific, identity level, who do I understand myself to be domain, where the avoidant's most foundational beliefs about themselves and their relational behavior live. The betrayal reached this domain, and the reaching has produced something the management system, for all its sophistication and all its resources, cannot fully repair. The betrayal was not understood as a betrayal when it was committed. This is one of the most specifically accurate and most specifically important things to understand about what happened, because it changes the moral accounting in a way that matters for the honest framing of everything that follows. The avoidant who committed the betrayal was not, in most cases, operating with the full, clear, this is a betrayal, and I am doing it anyway consciousness that the word betrayal implies when applied to its most deliberate forms. They were operating from the management system's authority, from the fear that the management was installed to address, from the specific below conscious, this is what the system does when it is under this kind of pressure logic that produces the management's most extreme outputs, when the intimacy pressure has reached a level the management's ordinary protocols cannot adequately address. The betrayal was the management system's most extreme output. The thing the system produced when ordinary distance creation was insufficient, when the closeness had reached the level that only a more significant disruption of the connection's foundation could adequately address. The betrayal was not chosen with the full weight of the choosing falling on the identity level acknowledgement of what was being chosen. It was produced by the fear, through the management, and experienced by the avoidant in the moment as the thing the situation required rather than as the identity-defining choice that it actually was. This is not an excuse. The not intending does not change the doing. The management system produced quality of the betrayal does not reduce its impact on you or its moral weight in any honest accounting, but it is accurate. And the accurate understanding of what happened is the necessary foundation for understanding what the betrayal has done to the avoidance interior in its aftermath, because what it has done depends significantly on the gap between what the avoidant understood themselves to be doing and what they were actually doing. The gap is what produces the ruining. The avoidant understood themselves to be a person who, for all their relational limitations and all their pattern-produced insufficiencies, was not capable of the specific kind of betrayal that was committed. The self-concept included, as one of its foundational elements, the belief that the avoidant's fear-driven behavior, however costly, however pattern-governed, however insufficient, operated within a certain domain. The domain of the ordinary avoidant dynamic. The withdrawal, the distance, the management, the insufficient expression of genuine investment. All of this was within the domain. All of this, however painful its effects, could be accommodated within the narrative of someone who struggles with intimacy and causes unintended harm through the pattern's operation, but who is not, at the foundational level, someone who betrays. The betrayal crossed the domain boundary. It was not the ordinary avoidant pattern producing its ordinary outputs. It was something else, something that exceeded the narrative's ability to locate it within the domain of understandable, fear-driven, not quite reaching the level of genuine, wrongdoing behavior. It was specific, it was directed. It had a quality of choice, even when the choice was being made through the management's authority rather than through the avoidant's full conscious engagement with what they were choosing, that the ordinary pattern's outputs do not have. And the avoidant's interior, in the honest hours when the management is least resourced and the self-concept's foundational claims are most accessible to honest examination, knows this, knows that the domain boundary was crossed, knows that the narrative that accommodates the ordinary pattern's outputs is not adequate to the accommodation of this specific thing, knows, with the specific, honest, cannot be reasoned away quality of something that the management has been trying very hard to reason away and failing, that the self-concept's most foundational claim that the avoidant is not, at the core, someone who betrays, has been directly contradicted by the evidence of what the avoidant actually did. The self-concept's foundational claim, directly contradicted by the evidence, does not simply update itself, it fractures. Not visibly, not in any way the avoidant's composed exterior will reflect, not in any way the people around the avoidant will observe. The fracture is interior. The specific, quiet management cannot repair this quality of a structural element of the identity that has been cracked by the weight of evidence it was not built to bear. The fracture produces several specific interior conditions that constitute the ruining in its actual, honest form. The first condition is the specific, permanent inaccessibility of the previous version of the self-concept. The avoidant cannot return to the simple, unqualified, the domain boundary has not been crossed version of the self-concept that existed before the betrayal. The narrative that was available before, the narrative that could accommodate the pattern's ordinary outputs within a framework, that left the avoidant's fundamental self-assessment as a person who causes unintended harm but not genuine betrayal, is no longer available in its previous form. It must now accommodate the evidence of the betrayal, and the accommodation changes the narrative, makes it more complicated, more qualified, more expensive to maintain against the evidence's honest weight. The second condition is the specific, ongoing, cannot be fully suppressed quality of what the honest interior knows about what the betrayal cost you. The betrayal's impact on you is specific. It is traceable. It has a quality of personal, directed, you specifically harm that the ordinary patterns diffuse, fear-driven impacts do not have. The avoidance interior carries this knowledge, the specific personal, this is what I did to this specific person knowledge, in the honest hours, in the nighttime, in the moments when the management is not at full resource and the honest accounting is most accessible. The carrying of this knowledge is the ruining's most continuous and most interior form. Not the dramatic, acute suffering of someone in visible crisis, the specific, chronic, below the surface, affecting the quality of everything above it, quality of someone who is carrying a knowledge about themselves that they cannot fully set down and cannot fully accommodate within the self-concept's most comfortable version of who they are. The third condition is the specific quality of the relational aftermath, the avoidant, carrying the fracture and the knowledge and the permanently altered self-concept, moves forward into subsequent relationships and subsequent connections with something that was not present before the betrayal. A specific, interior, self-protective caution that is not the ordinary management system's function, not the distancing of someone who is managing against intimacy pressure, but the caution of someone who has learned through the specific, undeniable evidence of what they were capable of producing, that the management system's authority over their behavior cannot be fully trusted. This caution produces, in the avoidant's subsequent relational experience, a specific quality that the ruining takes in its most practical, ongoing form. The avoidant who has betrayed cannot engage with subsequent genuine closeness with the same quality of managed certainty about their own behavior that they had before. The management system's authority has been revealed as capable of producing outputs that exceeded what the avoidant understood themselves capable of, and this revelation carried privately, maintained below the surface of the continued self-sufficient presentation, changes the quality of every subsequent relational engagement in the specific, below conscious. This knowledge is now part of how I engage way of something that has been permanently installed in the interior's operating conditions. The avoidant had no idea that betraying you would produce this, not because they were unaware that betrayals have consequences. The intellectual understanding of cause and effect is available to the avoidant in every other domain, but because the betrayal was committed through the management system's authority rather than through the full, conscious, identity-engaging choosing that would have required the avoidant to engage with the question of what they were choosing and what its choosing would mean about who they are. The management system does not engage with identity questions. It manages. It produces outputs in response to inputs according to its protocols. The identity questions: who am I when I do this? What does this say about what I am capable of? What kind of person makes this choice? Are not in the management system's domain. They arrive in the aftermath, in the honest hours, in the interior's own accounting of what happened and what it means. And what they mean, arriving in the aftermath, in the full weight of the honest accounting that the management was not present to prevent, is the ruining. The specific, interior, self-concept fracturing, knowledge-carrying, subsequent engagement-altering condition that the betrayal installed in the avoidance interior in the moment of its commission, and that has been operating there quietly and without the composed exterior's permission ever since. You did not deserve to be betrayed. The specific clarity of this does not require the extensive examination that more ambiguous wrongs require. You brought genuine caring to a connection with someone whose fear produced outputs that exceeded what the connection's integrity could sustain. The betrayal was the management system's most extreme production. Its impact on you was real. Its cost to you was specific and personal, and not the kind of cost that the honest accounting of what happened can minimize into anything smaller than what it was. The avoidant is living with what the betrayal installed in their interior, not as punishment administered from outside, as the natural, structural, entirely self-generated consequence of a self that committed something whose honest weight the self-concept was not built to bear and has not, despite the management's best efforts, fully absorbed. The ruining is real, and it was never about your insufficient worth. It was always about the specific. Boundary crossing, identity fracturing cannot be accommodated within the previous narrative quality of what the management system produced at its most extreme in response to something that, in its genuine depth and its genuine closeness, exceeded what the management had been built to handle without producing exactly this. The betrayal was the management at its worst. The ruining is the honest interior's response to what the management did in its name, and the response, however private, however managed against, however invisible to the composed exterior, is real and will be for a long time.